The old Mustang sat in the driveway like a sad reminder of better days, its once gleaming paint now dulled by years of neglect. My stepmother Victoria stood next to it, dangling the keys with a smirk that made my blood boil. "Here's your inheritance, a broken car," she laughed, tossing the keys at my feet. "Your dear grandfather specifically wanted you to have it. Enjoy." I am Alex Carter, and this was supposed to be the reading of my grandfather's will. Instead, it felt more like a carefully orchestrated humiliation. Behind Victoria, my stepbrother Thomas leaned against his brand new Tesla, examining his manicured nails with practiced indifference. "At least it'll make a decent lawn ornament," he sneered, "though it might lower our property values." I bent down to pick up the keys, remembering the last conversation I had with Grandpa Jack before he passed away. He'd been different that day, more serious than usual, his eyes carrying a weight I didn't understand. "Alex," he'd said, his voice barely above a whisper, "remember what I taught you about cars? About how the real value isn't always in what you can see." At the time, I thought he was just being nostalgic. Now, standing in front of his old Mustang while the rest of the family divided up his fortune, those words took on a new meaning. Victoria and my father had already disappeared inside, probably to continue parsing through Grandpa's estate. They'd gotten everything else: the house, the investments, the art collection. All I got was this broken-down 1967 Mustang that hadn't run in years. "Need help pushing it to the junkyard?" Thomas called out as I opened the driver's side door. The hinges creaked in protest, releasing a musty smell that brought back memories of summer days spent in Grandpa's garage. I ignored Thomas and slid into the familiar leather seat. Grandpa and I had spent countless hours in this car, him teaching me about engines while Victoria complained about the waste of time. "A lady should focus on more refined pursuits," she'd say, steering me toward piano lessons and cotillion classes. But Grandpa knew better. He recognized my fascination with mechanics, my natural ability to understand how things worked. Under his guidance, I learned every inch of this car, except for the engine. Strangely, he never let me work on the engine. "Some things need to wait for the right time," he'd say whenever I asked. The interior was exactly as I remembered. The worn leather steering wheel, the vintage radio, even the small compass mounted on the dashboard that never seemed to point north. I ran my fingers along the familiar contours, wondering why Grandpa would leave me a car that didn't even run. That's when I noticed something different. The compass, which had always been stuck pointing southeast, was now perfectly aligned with north. I remembered Grandpa's words about secret compartments in classic cars, about how people used to hide valuable things in plain sight. With trembling fingers, I turned the compass dial. Click. A small panel beneath the radio popped open, revealing a folded piece of paper. My heart pounding, I carefully unfolded it. Inside, in Grandpa's distinct handwriting, was a message. "My dearest Alex, if you're reading this, then everything has gone according to plan. They all think I've left you nothing but a broken car. They're wrong. The real inheritance is hidden where only someone who truly understands cars would think to look. Remember our lessons about the heart of every vehicle. The engine holds more than just mechanical parts. Love, Grandpa Jack. P.S. The key isn't just for the ignition." I stared at the note, my mind racing. The engine. The one part of the car he never let me explore. But why? Looking up, I saw Victoria watching me from the kitchen window, her expression a mixture of satisfaction and disdain. She thought she had won, that she had finally put me in my place. I stepped out of the car and popped the hood, the familiar smell of old metal and engine oil filling my nostrils. At first glance, everything looked normal, if you could call decades of rust and grime normal. But there was something off about the engine block. The dimensions weren't quite right for a '67 Mustang. It was subtle. Something only someone intimately familiar with these cars would notice. And there, behind the air filter, was a small keyhole that definitely wasn't factory standard. My hands shook as I examined the car key more closely. It wasn't just a regular key. It was a precision-cut tool with unusual grooves along its edge. The kind of key that might open something more valuable than just a car door. Still playing mechanic, Victoria's voice made me jump. She had come outside, probably to hurry me along. "The tow truck will be here soon to take that eyesore away." "I think I'll keep it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "For sentimental reasons." She rolled her eyes. "Always the sentimental fool, just like your grandfather. Fine, keep your piece of junk, but have it off my property by sundown. As she clicked back toward the house in her expensive heels, I caught a glimpse of Thomas through the window, laughing at something on his phone. They had no idea what Grandpa had done. I waited until they went back inside before inserting the key into the hidden lock. It fit perfectly. With a deep breath, I turned it. The sound was so quiet I almost missed it. A soft click followed by a mechanical whir. A hidden panel in the engine block slowly opened, revealing a space that shouldn't exist in a normal car engine. Inside was a small fireproof box, secured with another keyhole. This time, I needed to turn the car key upside down to make it fit. Another click, another moment of truth. My hands trembled as I opened the box. Inside was a weathered leather notebook and a small USB drive. The notebook contained pages of handwritten notes, numbers, and what looked like cryptographic keys. But it was the last page that made my heart stop. In Grandpa's handwriting was a clear message. Bitcoin wallet access codes. Current value, approximately $89 million. They thought I was crazy for investing in cryptocurrency back in 2010. They mocked my internet money and my foolish obsession with technology, so I let them think they had won. But you, Alex, you always understood that the future belongs to those who are willing to embrace it. This wallet contains my entire cryptocurrency portfolio, accumulated over the past decade. The codes are split between this notebook and the USB drive. You'll need both to access the funds, and only you would know where to look for them. Use it wisely, my dear, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is letting them think they've won, until they realize they never understood the game in the first place. I closed the box with shaking hands, my mind struggling to process what I had just discovered. $89 million, hidden in plain sight in a car they thought was worthless. A knock on the window made me jump. It was Thomas, looking annoyed. Mom says you need to move your junk heap now. The landscapers are coming. I nodded, keeping my face carefully neutral. No problem. I'm almost done here. As he walked away, I carefully secured the hidden compartment and closed the hood. I had a lot to figure out, but one thing was certain. Grandpa had just changed my life in ways Victoria and Thomas couldn't begin to imagine. And they were about to learn that sometimes the most valuable things are hidden in what appears to be worthless. The next few hours were a blur. I arranged for a flap truck to transport the Mustang to a private garage I'd rented, not the junkyard Victoria assumed I'd use. The whole time, I could feel their eyes on me, watching with a mixture of contempt and amusement as I treated the worthless car like it was precious cargo. Make sure they don't scratch it, Thomas mocked as the truck arrived. Would hate to damage such a valuable piece of junk. If he only knew that the car now carried proof of a fortune worth more than everything his mother had inherited combined. Once the Mustang was safely in my rented garage, I began the meticulous process of accessing the Bitcoin wallet. Grandpa's notes were incredibly detailed, reflecting his background as an engineer. He'd split the access codes and private keys between the physical notebook and encrypted files on the USB drive. A security measure that proved he was far more tech-savvy than anyone had given him credit for. As I worked, I thought about all the times Victoria had ridiculed him for his interest in cryptocurrency. Internet funny money, she called it, laughing when he tried to explain blockchain technology during family dinners. It took 3 days to piece everything together. 3 days of careful work, cross-referencing codes, and following Grandpa's encrypted instructions. Finally, on a quiet Sunday morning, I entered the last sequence of keys. The screen blinked, then displayed a number that made my hands shake. 2,145.7 BTC. Current value, $89,476,590. I sat back in my chair stunned. It was real. All of it. My phone buzzed. Another text from Victoria. The landscapers need to clear that oil stain your precious car left on the driveway. You'll be receiving the bill. I smiled, remembering Grandpa's words about letting them think they'd won. For now, I decided to maintain the illusion. I had plans to make. Over the next few weeks, I executed Grandpa's instructions carefully. He had outlined a complete strategy for handling the inheritance, including setting up secure accounts and making quiet investments through multiple channels. I kept going to my job as a mechanical engineer, living in my modest apartment, giving no indication that anything had changed. But behind the scenes, pieces were falling into place. Then came the moment that changed everything. I was at my usual coffee shop when Thomas walked in, his designer suit wrinkled and his usual smugness replaced by obvious distress. He didn't notice me in the corner as he argued on his phone. "Mom, the investment isn't just down, it's gone. The whole tech fund collapsed. We've lost almost everything." I remembered Victoria bragging about investing most of Grandpa's liquid assets in a guaranteed tech fund, ignoring his written advice to maintain a diversified portfolio. Over the next few days, news of the collapse spread through the family. Victoria had lost over 70% of her inherited fortune in one catastrophic investment. The house would have to be sold to cover debts she'd taken on, confident in her investment success. That's when I decided it was time. I hired a renowned classic car restoration company to completely rebuild the Mustang, using only original parts. The day it was finished, gleaming in its original metallic blue glory, I drove it to a family dinner Victoria had called to discuss financial arrangements. The screech of tires as I pulled into the driveway brought everyone running outside. Their jaws dropped at the sight of the perfectly restored classic car. How could you afford this?" Victoria stammered. I stepped out, adjusting my new Savile Row suit. "Funny story about that. Remember how you all laughed at Grandpa's interest in cryptocurrency?" The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" "Bitcoin," I said calmly. "Grandpa invested in it back in 2010. Quite heavily, actually. He just needed someone who would know where to look for the wallet codes." "The car," Thomas whispered, realization dawning. "He hid them in the car." I nodded. "In a hidden compartment in the engine. The one place he knew only someone who truly loved cars would think to look." Victoria's face contorted with rage. "That's impossible. He left everything to me. Those assets should be mine." Actually, I pulled out a folder containing Grandpa's original investment records. These were his personal investments, completely separate from the estate, and he left very specific instructions about who should receive them. My father, who had been quietly watching, finally spoke. How much?" $89 million, I said quietly. "Give or take a few $100,000 depending on the day's exchange rate." The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas collapsed into a patio chair, while Victoria's perfectly maintained composure cracked completely. "You have to share it," she finally managed. "We're family." I thought about all the times they'd excluded me, mocked me, treated me as less than nothing. "Family?" I laughed. "Like how you shared the estate? Like how you've treated me for the past 10 years? "That was different," she protested. "We didn't know." "Exactly. You didn't know. You judge everything by appearances, never bothering to look deeper. Just like with this car." I ran my hand along the Mustang's perfectly restored hood. "Grandpa understood something you never did. True value isn't always obvious at first glance." "Please." Thomas stepped forward. "After the fund collapse, we're going to lose everything." I took a deep breath. Grandpa also left instructions about that possibility. He knew Victoria would ignore his investment advice. That's why he set up a separate trust. They all stared at me as I continued. "The trust will provide a modest monthly stipend to ensure you don't end up destitute. But you'll never control the principal amount. And it comes with conditions." "What conditions?" Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "First, you have to move out of the estate. Grandpa wanted it turned into a technical training school, focusing on engineering and emerging technologies. Second, Thomas needs to get a real job. No more living off family money. And finally, you both need to publicly acknowledge where you went wrong with Grandpa's investments." "And if we refuse?" Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Then you get nothing. Your choice." The negotiations that followed lasted weeks. Victoria fought every condition, tried every manipulation tactic she knew. But in the end, facing complete financial ruin, they accepted. The transformation was almost comical. Victoria, who had once mocked Grandpa's obsession with technology, now claimed she had always seen the potential in cryptocurrency. Thomas actually found he had a talent for sales once he was forced to work for a living. I focused on honoring Grandpa's true legacy. The technical school opened a year later, offering free training to promising students who couldn't afford traditional education. The Mustang, fully restored, sits in the school's lobby as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The family dynamics shifted permanently. Victoria and Thomas maintain a careful politeness during mandatory trust review meetings, their previous arrogance replaced by grudging respect. My father, to his credit, eventually apologized for years of letting Victoria drive a wedge between us. But the most satisfying moment came when I found one final note from Grandpa, hidden in a car's restored glove compartment. Alex, by now you've discovered everything, and knowing you, handled it with more grace than they deserve. The money was never the real inheritance, it was the lesson. Success isn't about fast cars or big houses. It's about seeing value where others don't, about patience, dedication, and understanding that true worth often lies beneath the surface. You understood that long before you found this fortune. That's why I knew you were the right choice. Keep the car. Not because it once held a secret, but because every time you drive it, you'll remember that the most important things in life can't be measured in dollars or bitcoins. They can only be measured in wisdom. Love, Grandpa. I keep that note framed in my office at the technical school, right next to a picture of Grandpa standing proudly beside the Mustang. Students often ask me why I still drive a classic car when I could afford any modern luxury vehicle. I just smile and tell them what Grandpa taught me. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone patient enough to look beyond the surface. The Bitcoin fortune changed my life, but not in the ways most people would expect. I still live relatively modestly, focusing my energy on growing the technical school and investing in promising young entrepreneurs. Victoria still occasionally tries to renegotiate the trust terms, usually after reading about Bitcoin prices reaching new highs. But she's learning slowly the lesson Grandpa tried to teach all along: that true wealth isn't about money, it's about understanding value. Every Sunday, I take the Mustang for a drive along the coast, enjoying the purr of its perfectly restored engine. The hidden compartment is empty now, but the car itself holds something far more valuable than Bitcoin codes. It carries the memory of a man who knew that the best inheritance isn't money or property or even a classic car. It's the wisdom to see what others miss, the patience to wait for the right moment, and the understanding that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply proving that they underestimated the wrong person.